Hello, I'm Frank Fellers, owner of Fellers. These products are called the Primer 94 products from 3M. 3M makes a primer that is basically used to help improve the adhesion of your vinyl wrap onto a surface. So today I have Justin Pate here. He's the owner of Wrap Institute and the world's leading wrap trainer, right? So I think he's going to help explain to us why the 3M Primer 94 is something that you've got to have in your toolbox.
This is a close-up overview of Primer 94. Fellers sells it in two forms, the half pint or 8-ounce can. All instructions and care are on the back. To take the top off, use a flathead screwdriver to carefully pry it off. Dip your applicator in and remove any excess moisture by dragging it on the side. When done, firmly place the cap back on by rotating it 360 degrees so no Primer 94 leaks out of the tool bag. It also comes in this 3-ounce dauber container. Shake it for even distribution. Twist open the cap, which exposes the sponge applicator. When done, simply just twist the cap back on for a full tight seal, and all instruction and care are on the back. Primer 94 comes in very handy when dealing with surfaces that have been primered or have rust. Using a foam applicator is ideal because it soaks up the Primer 94 and holds it for a long time, as well as puts a nice thin coat. You don't want too much. Overlap the strokes for full coverage, and always allow Primer 94 to dry for 5 minutes before installing the film. Primer 94 also comes in extremely handy when working with old motorcycles that have been entirely primered. But again, you don't have to put Primer 94 on the entire area. The edges are where the main problems are going to be in terms of stretching the film and for holding for the long term. So again, try to do a 360 degree circle around the gas tank to make sure you get 100% of the edges with Primer 94. Again, allow it to dry for 5 minutes before applying the film, and you have about 45 minutes before the Primer 94 starts to lose its power. So you have a little window there. But again, using a foam applicator is ideal because it holds the Primer 94 and you don't have to use too much, and it puts just the right amount on to the edge. And this is a good example where the bumper is plastic, and when the graphics were removed, a little bit of the paint came off because that's a low surface energy for the paint and primer to bond to. So instead of repainting the entire bumper, simply apply a little Primer 94 and then apply the graphics. Primer 94 works very good for very deep recessed areas in conjunction with using particularly thick film. Put a little coat of Primer 94 on just the edges. You don't have to apply it on the main surface flat area. You want to apply it just to the edges of the film where it holds it the most. A lot of trailers and box trucks have a thin silicone coating on the edges. Again, film doesn't like to stick to this because it's oil-based. So putting a thin coat of Primer 94 on these edges really helps for long-term durability. Primer 94 is essential when applying graphics to boats or other types of watercraft. These areas are exposed to lots of water and moisture, so you really want to make sure that the film seals properly on all edges, even recessed areas, because fiberglass has a lower surface energy in most cases than metal and paint. So again, you want to make sure these edges have a nice thin coat. But again, you don't want to apply too much Primer 94, just enough. Primer 94 can be used on interiors, especially with wood, which have a notoriously low surface energy. So instead of using a foam applicator, in this case, a towel was being used that was dipped into the can and then applied. And again, this is a nice wide application because the door has wide edges, so this makes it a little quicker for the installer to apply Primer 94. Primer 94 can also be used on skateboards, again, wood, and it's exposed to a lot of abuse, curbs, sidewalks, moisture. So again, if your graphics are being applied to this, apply a nice thin coat of Primer 94 to all edges. And again, always try to be thorough and start at one point and do a 360 so all edges are completely sealed. One thing to note with Primer 94 is once the graphics are removed, it will leave adhesive residue behind on any area where Primer 94 was used. This adhesive residue can be difficult to remove, so always consider that when you're applying. So this is why you should only put on a thin amount and not too much, because obviously it'll add to the install time. This is a great example where too much Primer 94 was used. Instead of a thin foam applicator, About a 2-inch wide brush was used, and it was used even on flat areas where primer 94 wasn't even needed. And this will mean a long time for removals, because then harsh chemicals will have to be used to take this off. Again, not standard isopropyl alcohol will take off primer 94. And here's a good example: if too much primer 94 is used, it can compromise the paint, so you have to be extra careful there. So again, only use just enough primer 94 that is needed, and only on areas where it's absolutely needed. Don't overuse it just to hold the film.